Hello everyone, welcome to my first Bujo video of 2021. So here I'm starting with the 2021 opening page. I decided to make it rather simple. It didn't need to be too complicated. For my 2020 Bujo, I did the same thing where I just did a basic 2020 across the first page, and I'm doing that again this time. I've also decided to completely remove the 2021 overview monthly page that I normally would do because I never use it. I never look back on it. It's pretty useless to me, so having a 2020 monthly page of any kind just didn't quite make sense this year, so I left it out. For 2021, when deciding my Bujo themes for the year, typically I plan them out in advance. The colors, the main colors, and as well as the main themes. And this year I decided that I would have the main theme be a color, because the one thing I've never done with my Bujos is having monochrome colors. Or having a specific color and that to be the main theme and the only color that's used on the page. I see this done a lot in spreads, whether various types of journal spreads, not just Bujo ones, and it's something that I've always loved the look of, picking a color and sticking to it throughout for all of the pictures, all of the whole thing. And so I decided that that was what I would try this year. January's color theme was white, although to be honest, throughout this gray is also heavily featured. I read somewhere, I think it was a Tumblr post once, where someone pointed out that gray is just dark white, and that kind of stuck with me ever since I read that. And yeah, I guess in a weird way it kind of is. But anyway, so gray, white, but white was mostly the main theme, and I picked out the pictures and built an aesthetic around that white theme. I was kind of struggling with the monthly page because now that I have my Artist of Life workbook, I don't really feel the need to fill out as much about my goals and stuff there, because I review my Artist of Life workbook every single night, and so having all of my goals and such in my Bujo no longer really makes much sense. So finding a purpose for the monthly page aside from just having an overview calendar was sort of difficult, and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to lay that out. And then of course the first 3 days of the month were Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and so those would be a page on their own, and I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to lay that out either. I've said this in my last Bujo video, but I really struggle with those pages where it's just a couple of days in the week, and I end up sort of not really quite knowing how to display that very well. So I skipped straight to the second week of January, the first full week of the month. Here I'm just counting out the squares for the boxes. This Bujo is dotted, so that's been a huge help because the last two bullet journals that I've had were just these plain paper ones, and so I had to do a lot more measuring and a lot more work had to go into doing spreads like this one, where there's boxes that'll have to be roughly the same size. I also want to apologize in advance because you'll notice that you unfortunately see my ear or the side of my face a lot. I've been doing this for several months now, but I'm still getting used to figuring out how best to film without getting me in the shot. And sometimes it's almost impossible. I don't know how some people do it because if I can't really get in there and see what I'm doing, where my pencil's landing and such, sometimes my writing doesn't look very good when I'm writing the dates and I'm not over it, so I can see really what I'm doing, and the angle's just kind of bad sometimes. So a lot of this I filmed while standing up, and writing while you're standing for me is kind of a difficult thing. I was so far away from the page, so there are times where unfortunately I am going to be in the shot, so apologies in advance if that's annoying, but it's I tried to cut out as much footage as I could where I was in the shot, but unfortunately there are parts where it just can't be helped. For January, I wanted the theme to be white for this month because it's just such a clean, refreshing color. It's pure, it's fresh, it's kind of a clean slate, so to speak, and I see the new year very much like that. And so I really was very, when I was deciding the colors for the year, some of them I had to move around, but ones like January were I knew right away what I wanted them to be, and white was definitely the color for this month. I included little butterflies in this spread. Unfortunately, I didn't get an actual proper shot of me putting them on. And this little calendar that I didn't think quite worked on the front page, I decided to stick here on this one for now. Moving on to week 3, this one I decided to include more boxes. I liked the idea of having extra space for what would be extra to-dos, not the main ones that I typically focus on, the really important to-dos of the day, but have a box that's for the extra little things that do need to be done, but they're not priorities. They're not main things I need to focus on. So that's what these boxes are going to be. I decided for this year I'm going to include pictures of Suzuki in every month. I already have a bunch of pictures on Pinterest set up for all of these different months that I've already done in advance. I already saved all of them, and I made sure to have a picture of her wearing the color of the month in absolutely every single one. I can't guarantee I'll be able to fit her into every spread I do, but she'll definitely be appearing each month. Typically, last year I did include Marilyn Monroe a couple of times. I included Heidi in the December spread, and I included Gina Nudi and Yamadadosuke of Heisei Jump a couple of times as well. But this year I really wanted to include Suzuki Heidi specifically every single month. I don't know if others will make an appearance. Right now it is just Heidi that's going to be appearing as far as I've decided. We've got a very simple spread here. Typically when I decide my spreads, I decide them beforehand and I sketch them out in my sketchbook so that I can see what works. And I find that this works better when I'm sitting down to do all of my spreads because I have an idea planned out and I don't have to take as much time to decide how it's going to look and what I'm going to do. And I also find that it makes filming these videos a lot easier because I have I don't have to take all that time to actually plan them out and do all of that. I learned that from my first few spreads that I did, that it definitely makes it easier to film these when I've decided already. And so this particular page was supposed to look much different than it ended up looking. This was one of those ones that I just kind of ended up changing as I went along and was inspired to do something a little bit differently with these square pictures that I had that all happened to be the same size. And finally, our final spread. I actually made a mistake here. It's going to be pretty obvious in a moment, but there's 7 days in a week and I only put 6 spots without realizing it because the one on the bottom right is my tasks for the week. So I missed a few days here and I spent a ridiculous amount of time, like I swear about 30 minutes trying to decide how this spread would be laid out, but I didn't get footage of that. I stopped the camera from filming when I was going back and forth for a ridiculous amount of time trying to decide how to display this. And right about here, I realized I'm missing a spot for Friday. So I'm adding it in. It was mostly this picture as a Ziggy. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to use, whether I wanted to use the cutout with the angel wings or if I wanted to use that other picture. The other image looked a lot better in terms of it matched the colors and the tones of white and gray much better, but this one's just so cute, so I went with it, even though the sweater she's wearing kind of clashes with the rest of the tones. It's more of a warm white than a cold white. In the end, I really liked how it turned out. Now we're back at the opening monthly page. I'm doing the calendar. I'm trying to figure out what works best for me and my Bujo, and now, like I said, now that I have the Artist of Life workbook, the monthly page doesn't serve as much of a purpose other than to introduce the new month and to have that one big calendar there. So filling this space feels a little bit more difficult than it did before. This year I'm just trying to minimalize and use more of what works and less of what doesn't. 2021 is potentially my final year bullet journaling. If I can't make it work this year, it might be something that I no longer do. I'm giving myself until March to see if I can make Bujoing work for me again. I did mention in my last video for my 2020 flip through that Bujoing last year just didn't really work for me or make much sense for my lifestyle anymore, and this year I really want to try to make it work by tackling some of the issues I had with it. When creating my spreads, I often would use glue, and this would wrinkle the pages. It would make them thicker than they normally would be, and so these books would become impractical to use because I couldn't put them on a shelf. I couldn't carry them around with me because they are so thick and awkward to handle. So instead, I got some double-sided tape to try to combat that issue and just hope that it would sort of fix that problem, because then at least the glue isn't thickening the pages the way it normally does. So we're going to see for the next 3 months how this goes and if I find it helpful or not. I do plan on doing things like a J-pop journal this year and other creative journal type things, so I think I'll probably just, if that does end up happening, I can still upload videos like that. Like I said before, I really struggle with these, pages where there's only a few days in a week. So I mostly just end up doing some type of picture collage, which I guess is kind of good because I needed to get rid of a lot of these pictures. I always end up with pictures left over, which isn't always a bad thing because I can use them for other things, other projects, other crafting stuff, but I just end up with so much. Here are the completed pages. I'm so happy with the way this month's spreads turned out. As usual, I don't love the spread that only had a few days in the week. It's very rare I end up loving the collages that I often do with those weeks. The second and fourth weeks are probably my most favorite if I had to choose. I love the soft feminine vibe of these spreads. They're almost angelic in a way, and the simplicity of them makes them feel so clean and organized. And that brings us to the end of my January Bujo Spreads video. Thank you so much for watching.